Welcome back, and wait until you get a load of this. Our next guest has just returned from one of the most dangerous things you can ever do. He went to the Himalayas, where he was part of the first all-Irish team to reach the summit of Everest in over 20 years.
Yeah, he joins us now to tell us about his experience. Please welcome former Mayo footballer Padraig O'Hora. Good morning to you, Padraig. It's great to have you with us. Congratulations, man. The first Irish team to climb Mount Everest in over 20 years. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm feeling great. I was delighted. It was nice to be part of something special, something different, and nice to do it with, as you said there, an all-Irish team. It's a long time since it's done. Pat Falvey was the last man to bring an Irish team over 20 years ago. So it was nice to be part of it.
So, Padraig, can we get it? Because we were just talking to you before we went live. Can you tell us about whatever about base camp or whatever, but when you're getting up to the summit last week, we were all watching it at home. I remember we were live going, how are they doing? How are they getting on? What is it actually like being up there?
I actually don't know. It's very, very hard to. I wrote diaries the whole way through. I voice notes to myself, trying to comprehend exactly what it is like up there. It's very, very hard to put into words. It's so far removed from what you're used to. Everything is different. Obviously there's huge risk, and it's high octane, really. You know, there's no room for error. It's incredibly exciting. It's unbelievably challenging in a weird way. Like, altitude just changes everything. But all in all, probably it's easy to reflect on it now and say it was enjoyable. It was incredibly enjoyable. It was unbelievably exciting. But yeah, it came with its own risks. I'm just happy to have nailed it down, done it really, really well, and come home safely is probably the most important part of the whole lot, isn't it?
It's amazing footage there that you've taken as well. Listen, you've played sport at the top level. You're obviously mentally resilient, but how difficult? Like, what was the most difficult thing about climbing a mountain, Mount Everest, the biggest of them all?
Yeah, the football helps, I think. You're used to, I suppose, high octane stuff, maybe some high pressure stuff, but it's so different. It's holistic. Like, if you look at and you've your own experience in elite sport, is like you have a team around you to kind of prep you and get everything ready, albeit we were part of a team. Everything falls on your own shoulders, you know, and it's really holistic. It's nearly more important about how well you take care of yourself, avoiding sickness, trying to keep nutrition coming in. Like, I've lost every drop of weight I ever gained. Doing all of those things right, like the climbing part, the exciting part that you get to see us stepping across the ladders, across the big crevasses, and doing all that exciting stuff it's kind of the enjoyable part. It's all the other elements of keeping yourself safe, keeping yourself well, trying to sleep. All of those things are incredibly difficult. Adam's the youngest lad now, the youngest Irish lad ever. The poor fella, sure, he couldn't eat for any of the days really on the mountain, you know.
Wow.
So can I Padraig, just to give us a sense, when you were summiting, it took you 2 attempts to get up there, and we'll get to that in a second. When you were trying to summit, how much space is there before there's a drop?
So it depends. Like, you push from base camp, and we pushed all the way. We skipped camp 1 and pushed to camp 2, which took about 10 or 11 hours. It was horrifically hard. You kind of try and move at night because the weather's a bit more stable, and it's actually easier to some degree to deal with the cold than it is with the heat. You can go from -25, -30, all the way up to 30, 40 degrees when the sunshine starts beating down on you and you have all the snow around. So that's really, really difficult. But for the summit push from camp 4, the first piece is you're working your way all the way up the balcony, which takes about 6-7 hours of just straight incline, just physically hard, but there's space to work, and you're on a fixed line. But from the balcony across then, which is probably the treacherous part, there's no room for error at all. Like, some of the passes, you can't pass each other barely. There's nothing. Maybe 6-8 inches of a path.
Oh my God.
And there's I don't know how many thousand meters down. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if you fall at any stage there or make a mistake, you're not going to be found. You're either going to end up somewhere in China or somewhere back down in Nepal, but you're not going to be found. You know, you're gone.
And that happened, somebody on the day you were climbing?
It happened. Unfortunately, it happens. I think, you know, most days because of the traffic, because of the risk, and because of the attrition, you're just absolutely tanked. Like a lot of people, unfortunately, lose their lives up there by just sitting down. You know, we come up over the Hillary Step and there's just a guy sitting there. And well, I thought he was just sitting there, but he's been there for 4 years. He's just frozen in time. He hit the summit, was walking back down, decided to take a break and just never got back up. And to be honest, it sounds crazy, but I can completely understand it. Like I sat down a couple of times too, and you're so tired and fatigued and just wrecked that when you sit down, it's kind of like nearly falling into a bed that you haven't been in years. You kind of get comfortable, and it's very understandable why a lot of people don't get back up, you know.
It's just that's unbelievable. But you mentioned the word traffic there. And now with cameras, we're seeing more and more of what's happening. The day that you actually summited, the second attempt, you said you were the first ones to get up and leave. So you were at the head of over 200 people, was it?
Yeah, we made a really good decision, and it's really hard to go first because you have to break trail. So you can imagine that like the steps aren't in place, the route, you can't really see the route, and like there might be fresh snow, which there was. So it's really, really hard to go first. But nonetheless, obviously you're out ahead of the pack. So we made that decision. Jason made that call from base camp and we got moving early. It did make life a little bit more difficult, but it meant that there was nobody in front of us. We were the first people to the summit on the 20th. But when you turn around, there's this very, very strange feeling. Like you get to the summit and like you've achieved your goals to some degree. Now, granted, I've done a lot of work with Karen Weeks, the psychologist, on this about not getting too excited on the summit, because immediately you get hit with this piece of dread. You're 11 hours on the move getting up there and you're absolutely wrecked. But now it's like 6 or 7 hours of real hard work to get back down safely. So when we turned around, we faced into a queue of, geez, there was over 200 people on the mountain that day, and it's just horrifically hard to get back down. There's some sections where you can't get round people. You have to put a clip on a safety in front of them and then behind them and try and not slip. And then, as I said, some people move your safeties or mess with the line, and that's where things go terribly wrong. And unfortunately, it did for a couple of people, but we were lucky enough to get by it all. But yeah, there's something that needs to change over there for sure. There's too many people on the mountain at the one time, but like we're not going to solve that from over here.
No, but you just said you had to work with a psychologist not to get too excited because you're on the summit of the world. But can you describe what that's like to look out over the Himalayas?
So we done it in the dark, which I was very happy about because of the queues. So everybody wants their sunrise, don't they? You want to stand there and see the sun come up. So we were tactical in the sense of if we go early and go in the dark, which did work, that we get up there with less traffic. But on our way up, we left at 4 o'clock in the evening. Like I have never, ever seen a sunset quite like it. Like you can see 100 million miles either way. You know, you see the curvature of the earth. You can see everything. So as you watch the sun set in the west, it was extraordinary. Our cameras were dead, our phones were dead, and to be honest, there's part of me that's really happy about that because it's our own memory. It was beyond gorgeous. And then on the way down, once we got over the Hillary Step, and I felt somewhat safe to some degree, and the sun rose again in the east, it was mind blowing. You just cannot explain. I don't think there's a camera in the world that could capture it.
No. Listen, it's insane. I mean, and I know you had your issues with with altitude sickness, even when you're up there, not being able to get in touch with a lot of your family for certain days as well, and just all the struggles of it. But to become the first Irish team to climb Mount Everest in 20 years is so exciting. It must give you like a motivation for new challenges, like Mayo getting to the All-Ireland final.
He's just home from Everest.
Come on, it's Monaghan against Mayo this weekend. You must be, listen, that's a new challenge for you.
Do you think so? Isn't it funny there that I actually found it easier to get to the top of Mount Everest than I did to get up the Hogan stand? But sure, look, What can you do? You can only try, Tommy. You can only try.
You can only try, and well done to you, man. Amazing.
It's amazing. You did all of this for Mayo Mental Health Association. People can find out more online if you want to donate or anything. Padraig, it was amazing just following along with you and letting us all in. And we're so happy all of you are home safe, because it just sounds absolutely crazy. Thanks for taking the time.
Fingers and toes intact as well. Good on you, man.
All of them still there. Yeah. And look, thank you so much. And if I can, just for a second, say thank you to all the people of Ireland. There isn't a country like it. And I think it takes going away and going into a different situation and setting to really understand actually what it means to be Irish. I don't think I've ever been as proud of our people, of our country, of the way we get behind each other, the way we're viewed in the world by everybody else too. So like, people sent messages and got in touch at different times. They may be strangers, but they don't really know how valuable and important that was to it at different times, because we were well ready to crack at different times. I know I certainly was. So
amazing. Very,
very grateful to everybody who touched base, followed the journey, the whole lot.
Good on you.
An absolute pleasure talking to you this morning. Padraig O'Hora, thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Thanks a million, Padraig.
Thanks so much, guys.
How amazing is that? My God. Wow.
I actually just, unbelievable. Anyway, let's go over to the Virgin Media newsroom. Here is